Well, welcome to Dreamforce 16. Good morning. Thank you for coming to this talk. We're going to be talking about Lightning components and Intellij, Illuminated Cloud. And first, before we jump in, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. My name's Chris Fellows. I'm a managing partner and Salesforce architect at Zen Cloud Technologies, where we have exceptional Salesforce consultants. I'm also a dad of 2 small kids, and my daughter's favorite movie is Finding Dory. So if you see some Finding Dory references, that's where it comes from. So let's just kind of jump right in. This talk's really about Intellij and Illuminated Cloud. And Intellij is an IDE that's used amongst the broader development community for many years. Back when I was a full-stack Java developer, I loved using Intellij. And when I moved over to Salesforce development, I always felt kind of like the IDEs that we use, Sublime and the Force.com IDE, never really quite cut it. So for me, Sublime always felt kind of like a improved text editor, and Force.com IDE was always a little bit like always felt a little clunky. So I always loved Intellij because to me it's an intelligent IDE and it does a lot of work for you. So we'll kind of jump right in. This is a demo session. We're going to get into some code. We're going to talk a little bit about Intellij here and some of the great features of it. We're going to talk about Illuminated Cloud and how that makes Intellij possible for Salesforce developers. And then we're going to actually jump in and we're going to build a real-life Lightning component that you can download and install in your org. And it's really useful. Actually, we're going to build a component that allows you to have editable related lists on any object detail page. So it's pretty cool. And it uses GridBuddy, which is a 5-star app exchange product that allows you to build grids of data and be able to mass update information. So that's what we're going to jump into. IDEs, the IDE you use, maybe it's a little bit of an emotional choice. I want to kind of look at what are the great features that I love about Intellij? Some of the things are smart auto completion, refactoring support. It's got one common view, which I love. The Force.com IDE has got all these different perspectives, which to me, that's the clunkiness feel that I get out of the Force.com IDE. Debugging support, duplicate detection, a really powerful search functionality, and support for all kinds of different plugins for cross-language development. So if you're doing Salesforce development and maybe API development in Java, you can easily and seamlessly kind of switch between the two. So that's what I really love about it. Now, when I switched over about 6 years ago to Salesforce development, I was kind of bummed that I had to use what I did. I always felt like some of those IDEs were slow. And last year, a developer, Scott Wells, built a plugin for Intellij called Illuminated Cloud. And we're actually really lucky. Scott's here in the audience, right there. And if you stick around afterwards, Scott can answer some questions. I'll be around afterwards too. But more importantly, we're going to be looking at Lightning components. But Scott's got a demo at room 204 here in Moscone, or 208 in Moscone West here at 5 p.m. tonight. I'll tell you, I've looked at Scott's demos. I've gone through them. And if you spend 40 minutes with him, you will be a better developer. Really, it's great. So Illuminated Cloud's a plugin that goes right into Intellij, and some of the features. Let's just kind of jump right in and look at some code and kind of see how things work in here. So this is kind of what Intellij looks like. You've got on the left a project structure. On the right, you've got your main code, and down below, you've got something around your workbench and common functionality like that. If you were firing this up for the first time and you want to create your own new project, you just go to File, New Project, and you select Illuminated Cloud here. And then here, what we're going to do, I'm not going to go through all of this right here, but you'd build your connection. So you put in your username, your password, your security token. And what's going to happen is Illuminated Cloud's going to go out to your org, and it's going to pull down your metadata, and it's going to build what's called an offline symbol table. So let's take a look at that, what an offline symbol table looks like. So here's one for my org here. And you can see it's got all the different objects in my org. And what that allows Intellij to do is to be intelligent about how I'm coding. So for example, let's take a look. Here's a really simple controller here, and I've got one method. Let's see how few keystrokes I can do to replicate this method here, right? Public, static, list, See, it knows I'm talking about the expense object because I'm in, it sees expense in there. Get my expenses. Return. Let's do a query here. From, and again, that was about expenses. And that's like pretty much it. So that was maybe like 6 to 8 keystrokes to create code. So this is what I love about it, is that it allows you to focus on business logic. It allows you to focus on architecture, design, design patterns. And you don't have to mess around with the code that you're just infrastructure code that you're typing every day. So that's kind of some of the things. Again, Scott's going to go into a lot more detail at 5, but I do want to show you kind of some of this workbench, kind of like what you're familiar with in the dev console here. So we can do queries here. Same thing. We can use the kind of power of this, auto completion. I can play that and it comes back. There's your Finding Dory references. And if we want to actually write some code here, same thing. And here, this is great. Again, the offline symbol table, really powerful. So it's knowing that I'm going to fill a contact list, and now it gives me in my query, without even knowing which object I'm going to pull it from, names of common field attributes in the contact object. So this is great. And from contact. And just debug, and contact dot name is right there. So again, very few keystrokes to actually write a lot of code. And here's all my code. So again, Scott's going to go into detail. We've got a log viewer. You've got access to your terminal. 2 other really powerful things to take a look at here before we jump into this Lightning component is, how do I, I've just written this new method. How do I now get it to my org? How do I actually deploy this code? Well, a simple command save, and we see down at the bottom, it's deployed it in 1.5 seconds. A lot of times it's sub-second deployments for even Lightning components. So it's great. And the last thing I think to look at is that's very powerful is you're probably all familiar with doing diffs and comparisons to code in Git or SVN or Subversion. This actually allows us to do diffs to our metadata in our repository, or in our org, in our live org. So for example, if I want to compare my local account object to what's on my org to see what kind of differences there are, it's going to go out, it's going to look at the account object on the org, it's going to pull that back, and it's going to give me what we're used to as a common diff UI. So here we can see on one side I've got an attribute that's not in the org. And then if I come down here, we see, I've got something in the org that isn't in my local, which is really powerful because it allows you to do declarative work, retrieve the metadata, and then I can just simply, say I created that through declaratively, I can just come over here, copy it to here, and now it's in my metadata locally, which is then really easy to get into source control. So this is definitely very powerful functionality. So that's kind of what I wanted to show you in terms of kind of the overall, crash course in Illuminated Cloud. Let's actually get into something and build a real-life Lightning component, because that's what this is about, the Lightning Theater. Let's build some Lightning. To do that, and I want to, we can build the, if you've done some Lightning Trailhead stuff, you've probably run into the expense app, which is great. We're going to build a component that we can actually use, as I said before, editable related lists in any object detail page. And we're going to start with the opportunity page. And how we're going to do that is we're going to use GridBuddy, which to me, I kind of call it the Getting Things Done app for Salesforce, because it allows you to actually edit data, mass updates, and be able to save that. This is kind of an example of what GridBuddy looks like. It allows you to kind of build related comparison objects and be able to have one view of your objects, be able to do a whole bunch of updates across object types, and be able to save that. So great. Let's build something. So if you guys have done some Lightning, you're familiar with this side of Salesforce. Here in Illuminated Cloud, we're going to say new Lightning component, and you can see it also gives us the opportunity to add applications, interfaces, events, tokens. And we're just going to build a component here. Let's say migrate editable lists. Oh, I think the great was too much. Gives me the option to add it into Git, which we're not. And you can see it adds in kind of some stub code here. Now, again, some of the auto-completion also applies here. So if I do a control space, we actually look and see what is it, this is a component. Also gives me the ability to implement. Because now we want to, when we're building Lightning components, we want to make this component available to Lightning pages. So we want to make sure, I'm going to grab a little code here. We're going to use FlexiPage, available for all page types. That'll allow my Lightning component to show up in when I declaratively want to create my Lightning page. And then also we want that record ID, because we want to be able to say I'm looking at my opportunity page, I want to see the opportunity record ID, so I can drop that into the GridBuddy grid, so it can show me the related to that particular opportunity object. Okay, so now this is kind of the stub code. Now we actually need to fill it up with the actual grid. So for this, we're going to flip back over and go to Salesforce. And if you install GridBuddy, I'm not going to go through all the details of it. You can visit the AppBuddy, GridBuddy booths. They're all over the admin zone too. But here we're going to go into GridBuddy app, Grid Wizard. And I'm going to select an opportunity-related grid. And when I do this, I've got 3 main pages. And we don't really even have to touch much about anything. We're going to actually all we're going to do is select the fields and actions we want to be able to have on our editable related list here. So here we go. So in GridBuddy, we've chosen an object. We want the opportunity object. And here I can find all of my related objects. And then I can choose all the different fields that I want. So if we look over here, we've got events. We've got opportunity contact roles, quotes, tasks, and I can add anything in here. I can add in products and partners and event relations and tasks. We're just going to stick with this for right now. But again, this makes the power of, as a developer, you can write this kind of Lightning component, and it allows your admins to be able to switch what the opportunity-related grid actually looks like. So if I come back over here, I can click on Embed Grid. And here we see what GridBuddy does is it basically, if it wants to be able to make this available, it wraps it in a Visualforce page. So we're going to do the same type of thing. We're going to grab this iframe, but we're going to put this in a Lightning component. So if I come back over here, this is what it looks like in my Lightning component. But there is a difference between the Visualforce code and the Lightning code. And I'll show you kind of here. There's a few little things that I have to do to the code to make it a little different. I'm putting in the URL here, and I have to escape some characters. So if you're doing this for yourself, you do have to escape characters in Lightning. So if I pull this, I can just drop this right in here. And I can save it, and this will now deploy into my org. So if I come back over to Salesforce, and we're now going to go to the Sales app here. And I now want to build the Lightning record page. So if you're not familiar yet with Lightning too much, Salesforce gives the opportunity to create these Lightning record pages. So you guys know what page layouts are. Those allow you to build different sections and different fields. A record page allows you to take a page layout and surround it with everything else that you want to drop in there. Visualforce pages, tabs. It allows you to do a lot of stuff that you had to do in Visualforce. Now you can do it in Lightning. So we search for the opportunity object. And now we're going to pull up Lightning record pages. And we're going to build, oops, that's a trigger. We're going to build a new Lightning record page. And when this comes up, you've got different options. We're going to choose record page. We're going to do header in one column. And we're going to name this our Opti related grid page. We're going to choose the opportunity object. And now this gives us, here's the header, and here's one column. So let's fill this with some things like the highlights panel you might be familiar with. And if you're into Lightning, you also know in opportunity, we've got the sales path. And then down here, now let's drop in some tabs. And here we've got, by default, related and details. So let's drop in the good old related list. You see that build right there. Let's drop in our record detail. But now we want to put in our Lightning component. If we come down here, we see my editable grid 2. That's what we just built. So let's actually drop that in too. So we're going to click up here on our tabs. And we're going to add a new tab. We're going to make it a custom tab because we're going to name it grid. Now it shows up here. I can click on grid, and I can drop in my editable grid. And here it populates right up, and this is what it looks like with the page. So we have to save this, and it's important you do have to activate your page. You can assign it to different apps. So we're going to assign this to the sales app because that's where opportunity is. We're going to save that in. Let's do another save just to be safe, and we're going to back out. And let's head over opportunities. There's good old Finding Nemo. And here you see, with just a few clicks, we got related lists, we got details, and we've got our grid. And so now you can edit all this stuff, and we can save, and that saves out to your org. So this is great. Now we've got a Lightning component that we can drop into the opportunity page, but I said, how do we make this Lightning component available to any page? Because wouldn't it be great if you could make a component that your admins could use and be able to just drop it into anything? You create a new custom object, you'd want to drop it into the account page, anything. So we're not going to go through every piece of code, but it's actually not too difficult. So I'm going to show you the revised version of what this looks like, so you can get a sense of Lightning and how it works here. So here, we're going to build the exact same component. We're going to make sure it's available for all page types, has that record ID, but we also want to find out, to make this generic, we want to find out what's the S object type. So we can find out, is this an opportunity, is it a product, is it an account? We're going to use that. And to build the URL, though, we're actually going to need to use both a client-side controller in JavaScript, and we're also going to want to use a server-side controller, which is in Apex. So we're going to say related grids controller is our back-end server-side controller. And then we can even give a description. So here how this works is, this is going to use our front-end controller to populate a variable called GURL. It's going to use a handler to initialize that GURL with the Lightning component, the front-end and back-end controllers to be able to populate the URL. And then all I have to put in here is the actual name of the attribute. So again, all this stuff you can create. You know, if I was over here and I wanted to create a new controller, all I have to do is Lightning controller. And you can see we can build front-end controllers here, renderers, helpers, styles, documentation, design. And so all this stuff is kind of out-of-the-box Illuminated Cloud functionality. So I'll just show you kind of what the controller looks like. So this is about as simple of a controller as you can get, and most of the code is kind of infrastructure error handling code. The gist of it is that we want to get this base GridBuddy URL. That's our C is our controller. We're going to call this, and we're going to pass in the record ID, and we're going to pass in the object name. And V stands for view. So we got model view controller, and that's kind of a common front-end design pattern. So our view is going to be our page, and the controller is going to be either this is the front-end controller, and we've got the back-end controller. And then we're going to create a callback to drop it into GURL here. Okay? So if we actually look at what's our back-end controller, Again, I'm not going to go into too much of this. Most of this is just so that I can parse the URL to get a URL that I can drop into the component. Because your Lightning pages, if you've noticed, let's take a look at the URL up here. It's going to use my domain name, and it's going to look different, and it's going to have Lightning in it. If you want to be able to access a Visualforce page, the URL looks different, and it's the old kind of force.com URL. So we have to actually build that URL to be able to access the GridBuddy Grid Visualforce page. So that's all that this backend code is doing. At the end of the day, it just passes back a string, which then gets loaded back into our controller here. And then we can drop this right into Lightning record pages in any other object. So for example, if we want to drop it into the accounts object, we should have it here. Oh, well, there's a bug in a demo. That's not new. So, but this is the code. We can actually maybe take a quick peek at this to be able to drop this in. Again, it's the same thing. So this is like things that your admins can do. They can go to the account page. They can go to Lightning record pages. They can take a look at a record page. They can create new ones or edit it. And they can assign different record pages to different apps so that common objects like account can look different between your Service Cloud and your Sales Cloud. And so here we've got, maybe drop in related grid. So, yeah, it looks like there's a bug in there. I'll post the code. So, that's kind of, this is basically a crash course. I threw a lot of code at you, and we ran through a lot of functionality. I highly recommend you go to Scott's demo at 5 o'clock today. Second floor, 208. And if you want to stick around afterwards, I'll be around. I'd love to get into any specific problems you have as you're either trying to adopt Lightning or anything you've run into. Love to work with you on that. GridBuddy, you can check them out in the admin zone, and we'll be around here afterwards. And I got some free stuff. If you go to ZenCloud Tech /DF16, I've got a free Intellij and Illuminated Cloud shortcuts guide. So one of the things that always stuck me to Eclipse and the Force.com IDE was I knew all the shortcuts. So this allows you to help kind of make the transition gracefully. And then also, if you want to download editable related lists for your org, then that's also a free Lightning component. You can download this through this link too. So that's about it. Thank you again, everybody, for coming out this morning. Enjoy the rest of your Dreamforce, and have a great... Oh, and I do have actually, if you guys want them, I've got... batteries for your phone. I actually have a bunch of those, so if you want to stick around, you can grab a free battery. So thanks a lot, guys, and I'll see you around.